This short video tutorial is just meant to talk you through the idea of net present value analysis with a fairly simple example. So the spreadsheet is called NPV that you can get from the course site. There are some instructions to read first, so that will more or less discuss the scenario that I'm explaining in the spreadsheet. Essentially what we've got here is a situation where I'm thinking about investing some money. So this could be, for argument's sake, to launch a new brand, and it's going to cost me $800,000. Now, because I've got alternatives to use for that money, I'm going to say I require a certain rate of return on my investment, and I'm setting my required rate of return as 7%. Now, if I thought the investment was really risky, then I would want a higher rate of return. Okay, so if I was planning on investing $800,000 in the stock market, then I would want a higher rate of return than 7%. Key thing is here I say I'm going to spend $800,000 now, so if I get no inflows as a consequence, then I've got a negative cash flow of $800,000. And then the scenario is, in return for my $800,000, I'm going to get $190,000 revenue inflows each year for the next 5 years. Now that adds up to $950,000. The key thing I want you to take out of this exercise is the idea that money received further off into the future is worth less to me today. And so what we do is we perform some calculations. You don't really need to know the calculations for this particular course, but there are some calculations built into the spreadsheet. So what this says is, if my required rate of return is 7%, then $190,000 received at the end of year 1 is worth actually $177,000 to me today. And $190,000 received at the end of year 2 is actually worth $165,000, $165,953 today. So the key thing here is, am I going to make a positive, does this investment have a positive net present value? Right? If I invest $800, I get these inflows in each year for 5 years. My required rate of return is 7%. Is this a good investment for me? And the answer is no, because at that rate of return, my $800,000 is actually only worth $779. So on paper, I'm like making a loss of $20,962. So the question is, what rate of return would I need for this scenario to make sense? And then what other things could happen to make this investment seem more worthwhile? So for example, what if instead of 190 each year, what if I got more of it in year 1 and 2 and less of it in year 3, 4 and 5? So let's say suppose I get $210,000 in year 1 and only $170,000 in year 5. That's altered the net present value of the investment. Right, so let's do an undo and undo again. Okay, so what I want you to do is have a look at this, figure out what the required rate of return would be for this to be a viable investment, in other words, for this figure to at least break even or be positive, and then think about how this scenario relates back to the reading that you would have gone over earlier in the study period about market-based assets and shareholder value, because there's a link between the two concepts.